Hello. Let me ask you something really personal. Something that probably keeps you up at night sometimes, even if you never say it out loud. Are you constantly feeling like you're doing too much? Like you're putting in 90% of the effort? Sending the first text, suggesting the date, trying to keep the conversation alive, only to be met with what feels like a dismissive shrug? Be honest. How often have you looked at your phone, saw that red receipt, and felt that little tight sinking feeling in your stomach? That confusion where you're mentally running through everything you said, wondering, did I say something wrong? Should I double text? Maybe she's busy, but why does it feel like I'm auditioning? That emotional chaos, my dear man. That is the price you pay when you're operating from a place of insecurity, not confidence. And it's exhausting. It makes you feel like you're chasing a ghost that occasionally throws you a crumb of attention, just enough to keep you on the line. You're not alone in feeling this way. In fact, it's one of the most common dynamics in modern dating. And here is a secret. It's not because you're not good enough. It's because you are completely misreading the map. You're playing checkers when she's playing a very subtle, often subconscious, game of chess. You see, the worst mistake a man can make is thinking that a woman's lack of immediate enthusiasm means he needs to increase his effort. That's where the confusion starts, isn't it? You pour on the compliments, you become hyper-responsive, you bend your schedule, you start performing for her attention, and yet, the more you pursue, the colder the trail becomes. You feel overlooked and, frankly, taken for granted. You begin to question your own worth, and that is exactly the psychological trap that often dictates the outcome of the relationship before it even starts. But what if I told you that the dismissive shrug you're seeing, the flakiness, the delayed response, the tiny, almost invisible friction you feel, what if I told you those are not signs of disinterest? What if they are something else entirely? A test. Not a malicious, calculated game designed to hurt you, but a quiet, almost primal assessment. She is testing your patience. And more importantly, she is testing your relationship with your own self-worth. This little sign we're going to talk about today is the universal, non-verbal clue that a woman is assessing if you are a high-value man who is grounded in his own reality, or a low-value man whose emotional stability is dependent on her approval. It is so subtle, so interwoven into the fabric of everyday communication that most men miss it completely. They fail the test, not by being unkind, but by being too kind, by being too available, by being too compliant. They mistake chasing for romance, and they mistake patience for indifference. Today, I want to pull back the curtain on this specific behavior, this psychological stress test, and show you exactly what it looks like, why women do it, and the simple, powerful, almost counterintuitive mindset shift that immediately moves you from the position of the desperate pursuer to the calm, confident, chosen man. It's time to stop chasing her and start letting her come to you. Let's start with the one that causes the most anxiety in the modern dating world. 1. The slow reply. Gambit. Why waiting 4 hours is the first test of your self-worth. How many of you have had this exact feeling? You send a well-thought-out, interesting, confident text, the kind you took a minute to craft, and then you wait. You know she saw it. You saw her active on social media, but there's no reply. Not for 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours, or even until the next day. The question is, how do you feel in that 4-hour window? I know what happens. You start checking your phone every 5 minutes. You open the chat thread, close it, open it again. You tell yourself, she must be in a meeting, or she's just busy. But underneath that logical excuse, the insecurity is whispering, she doesn't care. Your text wasn't good enough. You're not a priority. This internal dialogue is the real crisis, not the delayed text itself. And here's the painful part. Your immediate instinct is to solve that anxiety by sending another text. Maybe a funny meme, maybe a short follow-up question, maybe just a, "Hey, everything okay?" You throw out a lifeline because the silence feels like a personal rejection you need to override. This, men, is the first and most critical test of your self-worth, and it's what I call the slow reply gambit. And let me be clear, 90% of the time, she is not busy. She is not stuck in traffic. She is consciously or subconsciously performing a stress test on your emotional composure. She is seeing if you can tolerate the psychological discomfort of her absence. She's assessing your frame. If you break your own frame, the frame of a busy, successful, content man who values his own time, to chase her attention after a few hours of silence, you reveal everything about your inner state. You tell her, without saying a single word, "My peace and happiness are dependent on your validation." And that, psychologically, is the opposite of attraction. When a woman truly respects and is attracted to a man, she wants to be a part of his already full, stable world, not the sole emotional foundation of an empty one. Your life continues without her immediate reply. The solution to the 4-hour wait is to give yourself the most important gift you can give: patience and indifference. The next time this happens, I want you to look at your phone, smile, because you now know what the game is, and put the phone face down. Go back to the thing that is actually important: your work, your workout, your hobby, your friends. You have to embody the genuine truth that a 4-hour gap in communication does not diminish your value as a man, nor does it halt your day. The text reply is a bonus, not a requirement for your emotional equilibrium. By not reacting, you pass the test. You demonstrate that her absence is not a wound, but a minor inconvenience. And that subtle shift makes her realize she's dealing with a man who cannot be easily rattled. But what happens when she moves beyond the text message? What happens when she makes an actual, tangible commitment to you? A date, a plan, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, pulls the rug out from under you. What does it reveal about her investment? And what does your reaction tell her about your own? That is a test that requires not just patience, but a strong sense of boundaries. Second, the flimsy excuse. When she cancels on short notice and waits for your reaction. We've all been there. The plans are set, the excitement is building, and maybe you've even made reservations. You're ready to step out, and then, 10 minutes before you're supposed to leave, the notification flashes. It's a text message with a vague, almost non-committal reason for cancelling. "So sorry, I just can't tonight. Feeling a little under the weather / my friend had an emergency / long day." How do you respond when the investment you made in anticipation is suddenly dismissed with a flimsy excuse? The scenario plays out identically every time. You feel the immediate spike of frustration and disappointment, but then the panic kicks in. You think, if I show frustration, she'll think I'm overreacting or too intense. So you immediately pivot into the nice guy response. "Oh, no worries at all. Feel better soon. Let me know when you're free. I'm totally flexible." You rush to reassure her that there are no consequences for her flakiness. You might even try to fix it right there. "We can reschedule for Tuesday." You offer your emotional and logistical forgiveness before she's even had a chance to ask for it. You think you're being accommodating, but you're actually volunteering to be a low priority. This cancellation, especially when delivered at the last minute and with minimal detail, is the second major test, the investment assessment test. The test isn't about whether she actually has a mild headache. The test is observing how easily you let her devalue your time, effort, and anticipation. When you immediately accept the vague excuse and rush to reschedule or offer total flexibility, you signal to her that your schedule, your plans, and your emotional investment are all entirely disposable in favor of her convenience. Psychologically, she is learning a critical piece of information, that she can treat your time casually without fear of loss. This isn't manipulation, it's a natural consequence of human behavior. We value what we have to work for and protect. When you make it too easy for her to show low investment, she naturally assumes your value is lower than your availability suggests. The correct response in this situation requires calm authority, not anger or despair. When you get that flimsy excuse, the mindset shift is, your time is valuable and she needs to re-earn the opportunity to share it. You should acknowledge the cancellation briefly and politely. I understand. That's a shame. I was looking forward to it. Take care. And then you stop. You do not suggest a new date. You do not over-explain how disappointed you are. You do not rush to reassure her. You put the phone down and you execute your backup plan. Go to the gym, meet a friend, read a book. You shift your focus back to yourself. By waiting for her to initiate the rescheduling, you gently communicate that the ball is now in her court, and she needs to demonstrate a higher level of respect and intention to make up for the initial low investment. This act of quiet, confident withdrawal is often the trigger that makes her step up her effort. But what happens after you start showing this calm patience? What happens when she is physically present and you're trying to build a connection, and yet she seems to be holding back the very thing you're naturally seeking, the emotional warmth, the appreciation, the feedback? How do you maintain your confidence when she is subtly rationing her positive affirmation? That silence, that withholding, is the next crucial test, and many men completely crash and burn when their desire for validation isn't immediately met. Third, the emotional Bacchite, the subtle art of withholding. Positive feedback. We talk a lot about effort in relationships, who is texting whom, who is planning the date, but let's talk about a more subtle form of investment. Emotional energy. How often have you done something genuinely thoughtful for a woman? Maybe planned a perfect evening, helped her with a tough problem, or shared a vulnerable part of yourself, only to be met with a response that feels just flat? Why does she sometimes deliberately underplay or withhold the positive reaction you know you deserve? Think about the time you spent hours researching a restaurant for a special night. Or maybe you went out of your way to secure tickets for an event she mentioned weeks ago. You present the surprise, full of quiet pride, and her response is a measured, "Oh, that's nice. Thank you." No massive hug, no burst of excitement, no effusive praise. Or perhaps you open up about a struggle at work, and instead of deep empathy, you get a quick, "Yeah, that's tough. Want to watch a movie?" Immediately, that little voice creeps back in. "I must not have done enough. She's not impressed. I need to try harder." And that is the moment the pattern starts to break you. This is the emotional Bacchite, a test where she subtly withholds the validation you are seeking, often because she senses your deep dependence on it. The psychological insight here is crucial. Many men have been conditioned to believe that their worth is measured by the magnitude of a woman's reaction to their efforts. We are often chasing the high of that positive reinforcement, and frankly, this is the constructive criticism. You are giving away your power when you treat her validation as your paycheck. When you constantly try to perform for her praise, you put her in the position of the evaluator and yourself in the position of the pleaser. She is testing to see if you will chase the affection she is subtly rationing. If she gives you a minimal reaction and you immediately double down, try another surprise, spend more money, or become overly solicitous, she learns that the key to controlling your investment is by withholding her enthusiasm. The solution is to decouple your actions from her reactions. The mindset shift is this: you do thoughtful things because they reflect your high-value character, not because you expect a trophy. If you plan a great night and her reaction is lukewarm, your job is to internally appreciate the event you created, not to desperately seek her approval. Respond calmly, "I'm glad we could do this." And then, here is the counterintuitive move. Pull back on the visible effort for a short period. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Reinvest that energy into your own mission or your friends. By showing that her lack of enthusiasm does not derail your contentment or cause you to escalate your chasing, you pass the test. You demonstrate that you are internally validated, and that is profoundly attractive because it signals genuine emotional stability. Emotional withholding is one thing, but what happens when she introduces a direct competitor into the conversation? When she casually mentions a past relationship or another man who is interested in her? That subtle mention can send most men into a downward spiral of insecurity. Why does she do it? And what does the content of that specific test reveal about your deepest insecurities? 4. The comparison. Whisper. When she mentions other men in a casual conversation. It can happen in the middle of a relaxed conversation, a seemingly innocent anecdote about an ex, or a casual reference like, "My colleague John was saying the same thing." There's a sudden, almost imperceptible shift in the air. You hear the mention of another man in a potentially romantic context, and your internal alarm bells go off. Why do women sometimes introduce the idea of romantic competition, and what is the underlying psychological test she is running? Imagine you're out to dinner, things are going well, and she mentions how a mutual male acquaintance was texting her something flattering. Or perhaps she says, "My ex always used to surprise me with flowers." Instantly, you feel a tightening in your chest. Your mind races. Is she hinting that I'm not doing enough? Is she trying to make me jealous? Should I ask who it is? Most men, driven by that competitive, primal insecurity, will immediately try to prove they are better. They might subtly critique the other man, or worse, they'll start listing their own achievements or suddenly increase their attention, attempting to outshine the phantom competitor. This reaction, fueled by a scarcity mindset, is the common failure point. This is the comparison whisper test, and it is designed to measure your abundance versus scarcity mindset. It's less about the other men and everything about your core sense of self. She is checking to see if the mere mention of competition sends you into a spiral of insecurity. If you react by defensively puffing up your chest, demanding clarification, or suddenly trying to perform to earn her selection, you signal to her that you operate from a place of insecurity, believing that your value is something you have to constantly defend against rivals. A woman is instinctively attracted to a man who believes he is the prize, not a contestant. The powerful mindset shift is to embody confident indifference. The next time the comparison whisper happens, the solution is simple. Acknowledge the comment briefly, calmly, and move the conversation forward without reaction. If she mentions her colleague John, you might say, "Oh, that's interesting," and then smoothly transition back to the original topic or pivot to a new, more engaging one. If she mentions an ex, you acknowledge it and show no emotional investment whatsoever. The goal is to convey, through your calm, measured response, that you are so secure in your own position and value that the existence of other interested parties is utterly irrelevant to your self-perception. You are not worried about John because you are focusing on your mission. By not reacting, you communicate an abundance mindset. If she leaves, it's her loss, and my life will continue powerfully without her. We've talked about patience, time, and emotional validation. But the final, most frequent, and perhaps most misleading test is the one that involves action. What does it mean when she asks you for a favor that she could easily do herself? Why is she watching how fast you drop everything to help her with a trivial task? And what is the subtle indicator she is looking for when she triggers your neediness? 5th, the neediness trigger. The moment she asks for your help with a trivial task. We've covered the psychological tests involving time, emotional energy, and competition. Now let's talk about the final, most seemingly innocent test, the one that involves asking you for help. It's often a small, mundane request. "Can you help me move this heavy box?" Or, "I can't figure out how to set up this printer. Can you come over and look?" The question isn't whether you can do the favor, but why she is asking for help with something trivial she could manage herself, and how fast you drop everything to do it. A woman texts you on a busy Tuesday afternoon. She needs help assembling a piece of furniture that she's had for weeks, or she needs you to pick up something she forgot. You're in the middle of a critical task at work, or deep into your workout. But that internal alarm sounds again. This is my chance to be helpful. This is how I show her I care. You immediately rearrange your schedule, sacrifice your priorities, and rush to her aid. You might even feel a sense of heroic purpose. You do the task efficiently, and she gives you a nice hug. You feel good, but the next day, the dynamic is exactly the same. She's distant, or she's canceling plans again. You've given her your time, your effort, and your commitment, but you haven't moved the needle on her attraction. This is the neediness trigger test. The test is not about the heavy box or the printer. It's about assessing your sense of prioritization and mission. She is watching the immediacy of your jump to action. When you consistently drop your own pre-scheduled priorities, your work, your gym time, your deep concentration, to solve a minor inconvenience in her life, you reveal a profound truth. You have low boundaries around your own time, and you prioritize her minor needs over your major mission. Psychologically, this is unattractive, because a woman is drawn to a man who is clearly operating on a purpose that is larger than her. She wants to be a complement to your great life, not the distraction from your lack of direction. By rushing to her side, you confirm that your life revolves around her, and that emotional gravity is too heavy for attraction to sustain itself. The solution is to establish calm, polite, and firm boundaries. The mindset shift is realizing that true value is shown by being a hard man to access, not an easy one. The next time a trivial request comes in, pause. If it genuinely conflicts with a core priority, your response must be confident and non-apologetic, yet warm. That sounds like a fun project. I'm actually deep into my work right now and can't step away, but I can definitely help you with that later this weekend. You offer a solution on your terms and timeline. By prioritizing your own commitments and making her wait slightly, you signal that you are a man of high demand, whose focus is not easily swayed. You show that your presence is a premium, not a default setting, and this demonstrates the highest form of self-respect, which she will inherently respect too. So we've walked through 5 distinct ways women, often subconsciously, test a man's patience and self-worth. In every scenario, the test is not about the action itself, but about your emotional reaction to the friction. The slow reply, the cancellation, the lack of praise, the subtle comparison, the trivial request, they all lead back to one ultimate question. Are you chasing her validation, or are you secure enough to let her pursue your calm, confident reality? Here is the most controversial truth I can share with you today. The moment you stop trying to convince a woman of your worth is the moment she finally starts to see it clearly. We've explored these tests, and I want you to understand that they are not personal attacks. They are the universe checking if you are truly the man you present yourself to be. A woman doesn't want you to fail these tests, but she instinctively needs to know where your boundaries are. She needs to know that your value is fixed internally, and not something she can inflate or deflate with a delayed text or a flimsy excuse. My dear men, my hope in sharing this isn't to make you suspicious or cynical. It is to give you the clarity that liberates you from that crushing, anxious feeling of always having to chase. I want you to reclaim your emotional real estate. Stop operating from a place of need and start operating from a place of choice. Your confidence should be the quietest thing about you, demonstrated not by what you say, but by the effortless patience and calmness of your non-reaction. Let your focus be on your mission, your purpose, and your own high standards. Which of these tests do you find yourself failing the most often? I want to know your personal experiences and the moments where you successfully chose calmness over chasing. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Remember this: the most attractive move you can make is the one that brings her into your orbit, not the one that sends you chasing into hers. Let her come to you.